Hey guys, welcome back to True Crime with Shannon, where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. So, a bit of news, if you haven't already heard, regarding the Jonbenet Ramsey case, and involves some unearthed DNA. So, let me go through that. It's definitely I think the Jonbenet Ramsey case was probably one of the first, if not the first, real true crime case that really got my interest going. I don't know about you guys. Let me know in the comments what kind of was one of your first cases that, really got you going here. So, again, this is from Fox News. An active investigation continues into the cold case unaliving of 6-year-old Jonbenet Ramsey with the help from several private DNA laboratories, police in Boulder, Colorado said in response to unearthed documents. On Friday, Fox News Digital reported an unearthed 1997 DNA test that shows DNA evidence recovered under the girl's fingernails and from her clothes was not a match for members of the family and others close to the household just weeks after the crime. The document has reemerged as part of a trove of old case files discussed in a forthcoming book on late investigator Lou Smith, Lou and Jonbenet, a legendary lawman's quest to solve a child beauty queen's unaliving by John W. Anderson. So this is definitely a book that's on my list that I want to be reading. We recognize that many articles and books have been written about this tragic case, Boulder's Public Information Officer Diane Waugh said in a statement. We have not read this newest book, which apparently contains allegations from the late 1990s. According to the author, the findings were given to a Boulder detective roughly 3 weeks after Jonbenet's death, but he waited months before sharing them with prosecutors, and police spent years with the parents under suspicion despite the findings. Yeah, that is not okay at all. Especially Patsy. I mean, she went through quite a bit. Patsy Ramsey reported her 6-year-old daughter missing on the morning of December 26, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado, after discovering a ransom note demanding $118,000 in exchange for her return. Jonbenet found her body later that day in the basement of their home. Now, here are some of the documents here, and I will go through them once we finish the article here. An autopsy after Jonbenet's death found she died of strangulation and a blow to the head. The Boulder City Medical Examiner reported an 8.5-inch fracture on her skull. The investigation into the unsolved slaying remains active, Waugh said, and police are receiving outside assistance. It's about time, if you ask me. This has been way too long in the making. The family especially, but we need answers in this case. At present, this active investigation continues to receive assistance from federal, state, and local partners, she wrote. Boulder Police is working with multiple agencies, including the FBI, the District Attorney's Office, Colorado's Department of Public Safety, Colorado's Bureau of Investigation, CBI, and several private DNA laboratories across the country. Petitioners last year asked Governor Jared Polis to have the DNA evidence shared with an independent agency so it can be re-examined with modern technology. And there is young Jonbenet. John Ramsey, Jonbenet's father, has since met with the state's Director of Public Safety, and a new review of the case began in November. This cold case review that they're going to do, at first, I didn't know how robust that it was going to be, but I've heard several people on the team are very experienced homicide detectives, he told Fox Digital last week. And there's John and Patsy back in 1997. Boulder police say they've investigated tens of thousands of tips over the years and interviewed more than 1,000 people across 19 states. Authorities are asking anyone with information related to the Jonbenet investigation to contact 303-441-1974 or Boulder's Most Wanted at bouldercolorado.gov or Northern Colorado Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS, which is 8477. And it does have a picture of his upcoming book here, John Wesley Anderson, The Legendary Lawman's Quest to Solve a Child Beauty's Unaliving. It's out very soon. Yeah, it says right here. The book is due out on February 28th, which is next week. I will definitely be checking that out. Let me pull up the documents here. Okay, so this is the laboratory report stating its submission date. Looks like 12/30 of 1996, which is pretty early on in the investigation. This is from Colorado Bureau of Investigation. It states, looks like all the exhibits here are bloodstains, and from Jonbenet, it looks like from both parents, and looks like other family members as well. You've got Burke in there, of course. And it's, of course, I can't read DNA. So if anybody is familiar with this stuff, I would love to get with you. It says the DNA profiles for the listed genetic loci were developed from the following exhibits. So it looks like they went through the family here. Okay, and here is, looks like here's the information on the findings. Based on these results, the DNA profiles developed from exhibits number 5A, 5B, 14I, 15A, 15B, 16A, 17A, and 17C match the profile from Jonbenet Ramsey. The DNA profiles developed from exhibits number 7, 14L, and 14M revealed a mixture of which the major component matched Jonbenet Ramsey. If the minor components from exhibits 7, 14L, and 14M were contributed by a single individual, then John Andrew Ramsey, Melinda Ramsey, John B. Ramsey, Patricia Ramsey, Burke Ramsey, Jeff Ramsey, John Fernie, Priscilla White, and Mervyn Pugh would be excluded as a source of the DNA analyzed on those exhibits. DNA profiles could not be developed from the sperm fractions from exhibits 23A or 23B. The DNA profiles from the epithelial fractions from exhibits 23A and 23B were consistent with John B. Ramsey or a mixture of John B. Ramsey and Patricia Ramsey. A DNA profile could not be developed from exhibits 48B, and a complete profile could not be developed from exhibits 42B-2 or 47B. The samples submitted for DNA analysis and the extracted DNA will be preserved frozen at the CBI laboratory for 2 years from the initial submittal date. So the key portion of this is that that second paragraph about the DNA profiles states that the family was excluded as a source of the DNA. So that is really huge, and shame on them for not making this information public. And while we saw that the family was supposedly quote unquote cleared, later on, I mean, how horrible if this DNA is proving that the parents and Burke and some of the other members of the family, their DNA was not found on Jonbenet, and it's proving their innocence. How horrific that they've had to live with this shadow over them, and especially Patsy, who ended up passing away. So I just think it's horrible, when folks are obviously unrightly, you know, convicted, and it's basically they've been convicted in the public eye all these years of somehow either unaliving their daughter and their sister or covering up an accident. And it's seeming like that's just not the case according to the DNA analysis, which was done pretty early on. So, yeah, I think that this is quite horrible that it wasn't released like way sooner. This is a piece that was done 6 years ago by Inside Edition. And with this new development, have you, of the DNA, this one really grabbed my attention. So I'm going to play it and we can discuss it a bit about a potential suspect in a case that is not the family.
It's one of the most baffling mysteries in criminal history, the murder of little Jonbenet Ramsey. Now a startling new twist in the case that has long defied investigators is making big headlines. This was the Ramsey family home where Jonbenet was murdered. Her parents remained under a cloud of suspicion for more than a decade until the DA finally cleared them. The case has remained unsolved for nearly 20 years, but now a private investigator believes he knows who killed Jonbenet. Private investigator Ollie Gray was hired by the Ramsey family to investigate the murder back in 1996. Gray has spent the last 20 years probing the case. He now suffers from Parkinson's disease. After all those years, he says he finally believes he knows who strangled Jonbenet. The individual Ollie Gray is pointing to is a man named Michael Helgoth. Do you believe Michael Helgoth was responsible for Jonbenet's death?
I think that there's something there.
The investigator says the killer lived here, just a few miles from the Ramseys. His family's home and business have been torn down, leaving only this vacant lot. He's described as a troubled 26-year-old who died from a gunshot wound in his home less than 2 months after Jonbenet was murdered. At the time, Helgoth's death was thought to be a suicide, but Ollie Gray now says he isn't so sure.
A suicide. Now that is sus. What do you guys think? I'm not saying that this guy on the screen, and that's granted, that's not a very good photo of him either. I'm not saying that he did this horrific crime, but this PI spent a lot of time, many hours, and to come up with this gentleman as a prime suspect, and then he suddenly is deceased. It's a little bit sus to me.
His death does not fit with a suicide. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
So that would imply then you think Michael Helgoth may have been murdered perhaps to keep him quiet?
I think it's worth following up on.
Gray says he's obtained a pair of boots once worn by Helgoth. This is Helgoth's boot, and this is the mysterious footprint that cops found in the basement of the Ramsey house where Jonbenet was slain. You were able to compare these to the prints that were in Jonbenet's basement, correct?
Yes.
And based upon your experience, was there a similarity?
Yes.
One similarity, the high-tech brand name is on both. Gray says he believes Helgoth had accomplices, but he doesn't know why anyone would have wanted to do away with a little angel called Jonbenet. A member of Michael Helgoth's family says they don't believe that Michael killed Jonbenet. A Boulder police spokesman says the Jonbenet case is an open investigation. We receive information on a regular basis that is evaluated.
Definitely an interesting suspect that, like I said, I just looked into that, and I'm gonna be looking more into this suspect that this private investigator brought up. This was 6 years ago, so I don't know if this private investigator is even still around. The gentleman sadly has Parkinson's disease, but Makes you wonder, though, again, like he asked, why would someone want to hurt sweet little Jonbenet? And, obviously his family, he's deceased, so they're going to protect his, you know, I don't want to say honor, but that's, of course, the word that comes to mind. But they want to protect, who he was. But that being said, curious if they have any DNA from this gentleman, and it could be tested to see if it's a match to anything found under Jonbenet's fingernails, or on her underwear, any of that key evidence that they have, genetic wise. I'm curious if I would like to see them check this gentleman for sure. And he's, pretty much one of the first I've heard. Yeah, we've heard that the gentleman who portrayed Santa. There's been a few others, but again, this private investigator worked pretty hard, and you have to say, this is definitely something that I think this new team that's working on the cold case should definitely look into this man as a person of interest. So, all right, guys. So, what do you think of the new developments? Again, the family apparently was legitimately cleared, and I think it's pretty cruddy, pretty crappy. Let's be honest. If that's the case, they knew that so early on that they let Patsy and John and Burke and the rest of the family have to suffer and live with this, not only with the shroud of over them, but the public opinion. It's a big thing in the Jonbenet case. It's a lot of folks have believed that the family was involved somehow, and I'll be honest, I've definitely wondered as myself. I wondered if one of them did something accidentally and it covered up. I'm not too, ashamed to say I wondered if Burke was involved and he accidentally did something to his sister, and they, the parents didn't want to lose two children, and so they helped make it look like an intruder, which I wouldn't blame them for that. But, let me know what you think about all this newer information that's been kind of hidden from us, it seems to be. And are you going to check out the new book when it comes out on the 28th? I'm going to be adding it to my Amazon list to be read as soon as it hits availability, and I'll let you guys know what I think of it. With that said and done, that's all I've got for today. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I would love it if you would. Just hit that like button and the subscription and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. All right, guys, have a great one, and most of all, stay safe.